Pectic enzyme, what the heck is it used for?
Welcome to the Ferment Station, where we talk about all things concerning homebrew. And today we're talking about pectic enzyme. I'm Brian.
I'm Derica.
And pectic enzyme.
It has been safely used since 1960. That's right.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And basically, it's an enzyme that breaks down pectin.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Oh no, I'm in a nutshell.
They can't see you.
They can't see me as a podcast. I'm so sorry. But I am bringing forth Austin Powers, okay? So you can have that visual of me being ridiculous.
Great.
Fantastic. What is pectin?
Pectin is actually like the jelly-like substance that holds the cells of plant materials together. So pectic enzyme is the enzyme that breaks those down. It has a lot of uses in homebrewing.
It is, because one of the reasons, and probably the primary reason for breaking down that pectin, is to eliminate pectic haze.
That's one major reason why a lot of people use it.
Biggest reason. But there's some other reasons that are probably, in my opinion, more important than that pectic haze, and that is...
It helps with breaking down the fruit. So it can often release a little bit more juice, a little bit more sugars, and it can also release more tannins into the wort, because the enzyme will actually work on the skins as well as all of the cells of the fruit itself to break it down.
It's also going to bring forth more of the juicy fruit elements.
Yes.
Bringing forth more flavor into your brew, which is what you want, right?
It's usually a nominal amount, but some people swear by it. Some people really love to do that and get more out of it. One caveat that I'd like to bring up is usually when it does break down and give more sugars, it also produces a little bit more methanol because it's a different kind of sugars being produced. So there's a little bit of a pro and con here. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying either way is bad. I'm just saying that's something to be aware of. I don't believe it produces enough to be a problem, but if you're very sensitive to methanol, maybe it's something to consider.
All these things you need to consider, absolutely.
So for years, we actually avoided using pectic enzyme. And it was mostly just because we tried to be like as natural as possible, only to find out that pectic enzyme is actually a naturally occurring thing. Otherwise, fruits would never actually degrade and fall apart in nature. So yeah, learning all the time, trying to get better all the time. The way to use pectic enzyme is you can add it directly to fruit itself. And that kind of... think of it almost like maceration. It's breaking it down and trying to get as much of the sugars out as it can and some more tannins.
It's similar to when you add sugar to a fruit when you're trying to create a dessert. It helps break down those cell walls and create more juicy, sugary goodness, where the pectic enzyme, you're not using the sugar, so you're not adding to the fermentable sugars, but you are bringing down the cell walls, so that way the naturally occurring fermentable sugars are more available for the yeast to get to do their job.
Generally speaking, you want to use about a half teaspoon per gallon, or our notes say 1/10 of a tablespoon per pound of fruit. Wow, that's interesting. 1/10 of a tablespoon per pound of fruit. Okay. Usually when you're making a wine, though, you're going to be using multiple pounds of fruit, so it's a little easier to measure it that way. For fruit prep, you want to add it before fermentation, okay? That way you let it sit for like 24 hours with the pectic enzyme on it, and then you can add that to your must.
If you're using it specifically for clarity only, then you can add it after fermentation is complete, but it's not going to give you as much of the benefit as it would as if you put it in the beginning.
Yeah, it actually has less effect in the presence of alcohol, so usually you need about twice as much. And keep in mind, you are not going to get any of the extra extraction of the juices or anything like that from it at this point. You're literally only going to get some of the clarity. So I don't suggest doing it. Like, if you remember that you want to do it all the way when fermentation is completely done. Because if you add it in the middle, I don't know that it's going to be as effective, and you're going to possibly add other complications to the brew. So keep it simple. Add it at the very beginning if you know you need it, or wait till it's completely done and it's, this is not as clear as I'd like it to be. Let me add it now. Now, let me say something else about clarity. We see this often. Many people will say, my brew isn't clear. What can I do to clear it? And 9 times out of 10, if I ask them how old it is, usually it's like 2 weeks or 3 weeks old.
Time is your friend.
You really want to let things sit a little while. Now, some things will automatically pretty much want pectic enzyme, like apples and stuff like that. They tend to need a pectic enzyme to break it down if you want crystal clear. But
a quick way to figure out if your particular brew might add clarity with a pectic enzyme is to do a Google Foo and see, does that particular fruit that you've added to your brew have lots of pectin in it?
Yep. Because another thing that I've heard people do is, oh, I added pectic enzyme to clear it. Well, what you made didn't have pectin in it. Any pectin in it. So the pectic enzyme isn't going to help. And their concept was that it's still going to break down the cell walls. Well, yes and no. If there's very little pectin in a plant or a fruit product, the pectic enzyme can't do anything because that's all it does. Like other clarifiers, if you're using it as a clarifier, other clarifiers attack the clarity itself, where pectic enzyme only attacks pectin. So if there's no pectin, pectic enzyme ain't going to clear.
And that's a really good point. There are so many different things that you can add or subtract from brew based on the ingredients that you're using. So it's best for you to be as educated as possible on the different variables that you have in your brew, so that way you know what tools are available to you to use to be most appropriate to whatever your final outcome is.
Now, something that we did a while back was just on the clarity again. We tested bentonite and sparkleoid. We keep meaning to do the pectic enzyme test. We have not actually done it.
That's right.
I have a feeling pectic enzyme doesn't affect flavor as much as bentonite or sparkleoid. That's a guess. It's a semi-educated guess, but it is still a guess. Whereas bentonite and sparkleoid, we actually found that it stripped some flavors away. Now, many people will argue this. We did the test. It's not definitive or the absolute by any means, but in that particular test, we did notice a distinct difference. There was flavor stripped away versus the one that was not cleared.
And all the tests that we've done, and we've tried to stress it, and hopefully we've stressed it enough, that is only definitive in that particular parameter. So if it was a test based on mead, that means it's only based on honey fermented products, not fruit fermented products.
Right. And only in those conditions with that yeast and that honey. And there's a million parameters. And that's the thing. Whenever you see a test being done, you can't take that as a verbatim absolute until that test has been repeated multiple times using different formulas and methods. If they get the same result every time, then you can say, this is a fact. This is how this works. Until that's done, it's just under those conditions, it did this. The next time, it might not. And that's how science works. Some things about pectic enzyme that we didn't even know until we started doing some research is that it really should be stored refrigerated.
Yeah. We
don't.
Have ours on the shelf.
But we didn't even know that. It should be stored between 30 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I had no idea. I don't even think it says it on the bottle.
No.
But that is important. If it's a liquid, I've never even seen liquid pectic enzymes, but liquid enzymes will actually lose 3 to 5% of their viability per year.
Yeah, so they're more sensitive.
Yeah, where powdered is 1 to 2% per year. So, in all honesty, I don't see any need to refrigerate it. It's probably going to get used up. Buy the smaller container, use it up before 1 or 2 years is gone, and it's not really even going to be a problem.
And most of the additives that we purchase specifically, even though we make how many brews per
Anywhere
year?
From 45 to 50.
Yeah. We buy the smaller amounts. So that way we know
I think it's like a 2-ounce bottle.
Refreshed on a regular basis.
Yeah, that way nothing gets... Yeah, I mean, you can buy them in bulk and save a little bit of money, but you're not really saving if after a couple of years you still have it and it's losing its effectiveness.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about.
And that, as Brian has already mentioned, if you do buy in bulk, make sure you research and double research to make sure how they should be properly stored.
Yep.
So that way you're not wasting your money.
Exactly. So we were using pectic enzyme quite often for quite a while there, and then we just started not using it. And I think it was as a result of that one test we did with the sparkleoid and bentonite. We realized, is it possible that we're hurting all of our brews by worrying about clarity too much? And we never really did worry about clarity, but we sort of did.
Yeah, and I think there were different brews that we've done because we do so many tests throughout the year on different topics, and sometimes it's hard for us to keep in track what is working, what isn't working, and sometimes things work really well and some things don't work well at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, as we've already stressed and hopefully stressed enough in this particular podcast, is that it's specifically based on what specific topics, what specific ingredients you're using in that specific brew.
Yep.
Because
Are we being specific enough?
There's no universal truths here. And I know I'm being kind of silly in my verbiage, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah. But we do use pectic enzyme when we feel a need to use it, which is actually kind of rare at this point. Like we've made a few ciders recently that there was some haze to them, there was some cloudiness, and I don't care. It didn't matter to me. I think the idea that it has to be perfectly clear to be good, it comes from, I think the commercial industry has made things so squeaky clean looking that that's the expectation of quality. I don't believe that that's what quality means though, because I know a lot of people that have made comments and written things in that I have been making cider for 60 years and mine is cloudy and it's probably an amazing cider that they're making. So I can't believe that clarity means quality.
And that is fine. And I think that's really a personal preference kind of scenario. Yeah. So if you are creating something, I highly encourage you to look at your ingredients and do some Google Foo and see, does this particular ingredient, if it's a fresh fruit or a dried fruit or any sort of fruit, does it have pectin in it?
Yeah, because if it doesn't, don't bother with pectic enzyme.
If it does, though, and clarity is a priority for you, then perhaps adding pectic enzyme is appropriate for you.
Also, if it does have pectin in it and you want to get the most out of that fruit and you are aware that there could be a little bit more methyl production, you can use it in that stage too to break down the pectin before it even starts to ferment, therefore eliminating the haze before it could even become anything and kind of recycling that haze back into more alcohol or more flavor, which to me, that seems like really the best use of it rather than just depending on it for clearing. Because like we said, you need double the amount to use it just for clearing and you don't get the effect of more flavors.
Right. For us, flavor is always king.
Yep.
We don't really care about clarity so much, but because pectin enzyme does not only aid in clarity, but it can add in flavor, then that's when we would want to add it.
Right. So if there's any other questions that you have about pectic enzyme or using things like that in a brew, ask us in the comments below. If you have a topic that we haven't discussed that you'd like to see us talk about for, 15, 20 minutes to a half an hour, just babble at you, let us know in the comments below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for listening and have a great day.
Bye-bye.